If you are like 99.99% of the rest of the adult human population and fear speaking in public, then the next guest on the Comeback Coach podcast has an answer for you. His name is Tyler Foley. His book, the #1 bestseller, The Power to Speak Naked, is what he talks about during this interview. So listen up now as we bring Tyler Foley to the Comeback Coach podcast. Here's the man himself, Tyler Foley, and I'm so happy to have you on the show on the Comeback Coach podcast. Tyler, welcome and thanks for being with us.
Oh, Mike, it's my absolute pleasure. I've been looking forward to this for quite a while.
Me too, because when I look at your profile, and our audience has been previewed on what you do and what you're about, but when I see that you're an actor and performer, being a baby boomer, I still get stars in my eyes when I think that I'm going to talk to someone that's been on a screen. Today it's all about screens, but in my era, being on a screen meant you were a movie star. You're the author of a book, The Power of Speaking Naked. Your specialty is personal development and motivational speaking. But here's the thing that really interests me and what I'd like to get into as we progress. You help people overcome the fear of public speaking so that they can tell their story. And now I want to hear something about the Tyler Foley story, because I can't believe you're going to tell me that life has been all a bed of roses for you and that it's been a lineup of beer and Skittles. What's the Tyler Foley? How did life start for you as a child and your upbringing?
Well, I was blessed. I had a really good childhood, but not without its difficulty. My father passed away when I was 6 years old, very suddenly, very tragically, to a car accident. And it really propelled my life to where it was. I wouldn't say that it shaped or defined it, but when my father passed away, my mother and my uncle were looking for an outlet for me, kind of something to do. I didn't outwardly grieve my father's passing until I was almost 12 years old. I believe I was in the 6th grade the first time I actually cried about my father. And I know that my mom and my uncle wanted to make sure that I had an outlet, and I had shown interest in theater when my father was still alive. In fact, one of the last things we would have ever done together was he saw me in the Christmas pageant play that was put on by my elementary school. And I got to play Joseph. And my Mary and I sat very politely in front of a manger with a baby Jesus doll laid very carefully, very gently. And as the wise men came and gave us our period appropriate wrapped gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh, I took these gifts and delicately and gently placed them down on baby Jesus's head. And with each gift that went over this poor doll's head in the manger, the audience laughed. And I remember just loving that and just getting hooked on that feeling. So when my dad passed away, Mom said, well, what would you like to do? And I said, well, I'd really like to do that. I loved being on stage. And so that began a very long career in film and television. And it wouldn't have happened, I don't feel, if it weren't for my father's passing. At least it wouldn't have been as successful or as elongated, because I had the opportunity to get into something that most people don't even dream about doing for years and years and years into their adulthood. And I was doing it at 6. And so that really propelled me forward. And I went to a fine arts high school, really dedicated myself to the craft of acting. And then my whole world crumbled again. January 1st, 1997, New Year's Day, I woke up and the left side of my body didn't work. I'd had some form of medical episode. They're still not sure if it was a palsy or a mini stroke. I've had tons and tons of scans done over the course of 18 months trying to figure out what was wrong neurologically, why it had happened. But as an actor, and particularly at the time I was studying musical theater, when you can't move half of your body including your face, and it drifts like this. And I mean, I talked like this, and it was hard. It was really, really difficult for me. And I thought that was it. The doctors were like, well, we don't know if you'll get better. And I went to a couple of different specialists, and I was really lucky in that when my father passed away, a lot of incredible men stepped in to become father figures in my life. So I was raised by a village, and a lot of people helped support my mom. And one of them was an incredible man, Robert Corbett. And Bob was a doctor of chiropractic, and his wife, Joanne, is also a doctor of chiropractic, as well as other. She's got so many initials at the back of her name, I don't even know what to call her, but Dr. Joe for sure. And they said, well, since nobody knows exactly what happened, nobody knows exactly if you will get better or not, but let's assume that you will. And these are some things that we can do to go forward. So I went through a lot of physical therapy, acupuncture, laser acupuncture, holistic medicines, chiropractic, and then traditional physiotherapy. And it was a struggle, but for those viewers or the listeners who can't see, my face does work now. I have a tell, when I'm getting tired, because I'll smile out of one side of the face and not both, but that's about the only side effects that I've had. But at the time, it was devastating because my whole life was mapped out. I was going to be a film actor. I was going to go to New York or LA, and I was going to be a star. And then my face didn't work. And how do you be an actor when your face doesn't work? Well, you put in the work. And so I did. I invested myself, and I really pushed through that. And subsequently, I was able to have a very, very good career that spanned 2 decades. And, it doesn't take a long search in IMDb to see that I got to do some really, really cool shows and meet some really incredible, famous actors and do some just really neat things with my life. So it was a blessing. And again, everything happens for a reason. And as tragic as some of that stuff was, I don't think I'd be the person I am today if it weren't for it.
Tyler, thank you for sharing that about the tragic passing of your father when you were 6 years old. The fact that there wasn't an emotional reaction, as in crying, until later, some 6 years later, if I'm right in working the age. Then the medical condition that in 1997, which caused you to be paralysed on one half of your body. And obviously you don't show any signs of that right now, though you did say that at times if you get tired, there are. I'll tell you what comes to mind. First of all, I'm always mindful that we just don't know, the viewer or the listener, what part of your story is going to be the seed in their mind that could germinate and literally be a life-transforming idea. So I acknowledge your story. Here's the thing I'm wondering. So there's some kind of a physical anomaly that occurred in 1997. Life-changing for you at the time. Certainly it changed the direction you were heading career-wise. And you said you put in the work, you went through all the tests, you worked with the medical and physical therapy helpers, and you described it as a physical thing. May I ask you, what was going on in the mind during the therapy and the change and the transformation to get you where you are, even up until this day?
Well, and again, I had great role models growing up, and I attribute a lot of where I have a mindset to people like Bob and Joanne, to my mother. I mean, my mother was a single mom, and I got so much, and I had such a blessed life that we were never lacking for anything, even though I'm sure resources were very, very stretched for her. And so mindset played a lot in it. And I didn't realize it until later that I was already of a positive mindset. So when they were telling me that I may never get better, I was like, well, you don't know. And I had the support of Bob saying, well, we don't know anything. So we don't know that you won't get better, but we don't know that you will get better. Well, let's assume the best, right?
Right.
Assume the best. What is the outcome that you want? What is the ultimate goal here? And that was for me to fix myself to a point where I could go and chase and pursue that dream. Now, I had to drop out of the show that I was in at the time. Didn't get to finish the musical. I actually didn't even get to graduate from the Alberta High School of Fine Arts because part of it was doing that final performance, and I never did get to do that performance. And they wanted me to come back for another year. And I knew that if I wanted to be a professional actor, I needed to be in an area where professional actors were. And for me in Canada, that's either Toronto or Vancouver. And me being on the West Coast, Vancouver was the obvious choice. So I said, no, I'm not going to come back. At least I will have my high school diploma. So that I will graduate. I just won't be a graduate of the Alberta High School of Fine Arts, but I don't need that to go and be an actor. I am an actor because I say I am, not because of a piece of paper, right? And the credits that I've gotten over my life support that. But whether I ever got into a film or not, I would still be an actor and a performer. Like my identity is not defined by the things that I do so much as the mindset that I take into it. So I knew that I was going to go and do that. And because that was the goal, and I surrounded myself with the people who could help me maintain that mindset, because there were times where I didn't like it. I remember the first week brushing my teeth and not being able to brush my teeth, because as soon as I started to get the foam going from the paste, it would dribble out the side of my mouth. I couldn't eat. I couldn't drink things. Like I was an absolute mess, and I had to hold my mouth shut just to be able to eat food. And I remember it being a really dark time. Yeah. But my mom was like, this will pass. We'll find the ways to figure it out. Bob was like, look, we will do the metrics. We're doing the testing. We can see when the nerves are coming back and what's firing. And being able to seeing incremental growth really, really helped. So it was just the small things, like when I finally could brush my teeth, or figuring out how to eat soup, or seeing the scans and seeing them go from red to yellow to green. And when I started to be able to move and being able to trace function again and do different things. I mean, even driving a car, when I'm 17, I had my license for a year, but I drove a standard. And for the first 2 months, I couldn't clutch because I couldn't move my left foot. Mm-hmm. And so it was things like that where once you had the milestones and I knew what I was reaching towards, it gave me something to reach towards. It gave me a goal, and it allowed me to propel myself forward instead of dwelling in the present or looking backwards. Because that was, that's just going to anchor me. I need to go forward. This is something that I'm going to overcome. And I allowed myself the freedom to have bad days, but to not dwell on them.
Yes, there's a saying I like. It's all right to look back on the past, just don't stare. And yes. Let's acknowledge. So congratulations on your transformation, and what a blessing, like you said, that you've had people like your own mum and Bob and his wife and others in your life in the past, when we're checking the past but not staring, and we see that there have been significant others who have been a part of your transformation. But the hard work had to be done by you, and you're here to tell the story today. But you're helping others to tell the story of their own comeback. So this is the Comeback Coach podcast. So people watching and listening to you, Tyler, are more likely to be people who are getting back on track after some adversity or a setback, or they're well on the way, or maybe in the middle of some adversity and they can't even imagine that a transformation and a comeback and getting back on track is possible. But they're going to have a story to tell. Everybody has a story to tell. You're telling your story now, and you help people overcome the fear, the number one fear, apparently. People fear public speaking more than they fear death itself. what is it that you do to help? Let's get into the nitty-gritty of how you help people now. Because, oh, by the way, you're a family man, I think. I saw a video. I think you've got at least one child that I saw. What's your family situation there?
Yeah, I'm happily married. My wife and I have been married what will be 15 years coming up very shortly. And we've been together anyways for 15 years. And we have a 5-year-old daughter, and she is the light of my life. And she's my why right now when I drill things down. And yeah, no, that is family life right now. Very happily married and excited too, because my daughter is just going into grade 1 this year. So that brings a whole full circle flood of emotion for me, and I'm excited for her. She's actually been accepted into a school where my mother worked at. So there's a bit of a family legacy going in there too. And it's just really rewarding right now for me to see her grow. She also is in film and television, because you can't have a dad who's been acting and not put your kid in. And I try really hard not to be a stage parent. I let her do it. There's times where she's like, I don't want to audition. And I say, okay, fine. You don't have to. And then as soon as I say, you don't have to, she's like, oh, okay, well, I want to do it. And then we go and we do the audition.
Oh, that's great. 15 years with the one lady, that's terrific. And your 5-year-old daughter that your wife and you have, and you're seeing her come along, and she's going into grade 1, you said, and she's doing her own little thing with her acting and auditioning and performing. That is, and I know what that's like. I'm a granddad, so I know what it's like. You mentioned something there. There's a soundbite there, and you said that's my why, and that hooks into the mission and the purpose. And so, all right, let's get down to the subject of helping people overcome fear of public speaking. Or let's be more specific to our audience, overcoming the fear of telling your comeback story. Because there will be people who don't even know it yet, but they will have a story that they can tell if they choose to, and help and inspire others who are going through perhaps what they've already been through and come through on the other side. So let us have it, Tyler. Tell us your whole story about how you help people. What's it all about helping people in public speaking?
Well, the first thing is when somebody says they have a fear of public speaking, I challenge that, because you and I are having a conversation right now. It's a public talk. And I would ask anyone in your audience to think about how often they interact with different people and verbalize those thoughts over the course of a day. There are probably a half a dozen to a dozen, if not more, public interactions. If you go out to a restaurant and you order food, you're speaking to probably a complete stranger, and that is still public speaking. You are speaking in a public environment. The difference is that we're not thinking about what we're saying at that point. We are living life. And what I want people to remember is that you're not afraid of public speaking. When people say that, really what you're afraid of is public judgment. And it's that judgment that keeps us back and stops us from saying the things that we want to say. One of the things that I discuss in my book is that the thing that you're afraid to say is very likely the thing that your audience needs to hear. Wow. There is great impact when you share your story, because as unique as the circumstances are, for me, my father passed away at 6 years old of a motor vehicle accident. More specifically, I was 6 years old when he passed away. My dad, by the way, was in his early 30s when he passed. And I remember the time when my birthday came around and my uncle phoned me and said, "You've now outlived your father." And that was a really impactful moment for me. But I am not the only person to have lost their father. I am certainly not the only person to have lost their father to a motor vehicle accident. I'm sure there's millions, not hundreds of millions of people around the world who have. But if I tell my story, my version of it, and how I overcame those events, if I talk about me overcoming a paralysis that could have derailed my career. If I talk about overcoming the complete loss of my first business that I put together because of the death of my business partner and an improper insurance in place, director's insurance that was non-existent for some reason. These are all stories that are unique to me, but are universal because your audience will be able to say, hey, that could have happened to me or that did happen to me. And if it didn't, your audience can sympathize with it. And that's the power of story. When we tell our story, we allow others to have a glimpse into our lives and see the world from our eyes. And when you tell your story in a powerful way, you have the ability to impact lives in a very positive way. I mean, I look at what you're doing, Mike, and you talk about your story, it has a positive impact. I know one of the speakers that I worked with, I actually went to school with him. Me and him both graduated from the Alberta High School of Fine Arts. And he struggled for a very long time with mental health issues, with addiction, to the point where he was consumed with the idea of killing himself. And he tells a phenomenal story because he's a very, very gifted speaker. And he calls it the 10-minute time machine. And in it, he discusses if he could go back in time and change the most traumatic instance of his life, which is when he just about succeeded killing himself and his kids walked in on him and ended up saving his life because they phoned 911. He talks about if he could go back in time and change it, would he? And the answer is he wouldn't. Because although it was tragic and there were some cascading effects from it, he lived. His children saved him. And fast forward a few years later, his relationship with his children, which was almost non-existent at the time, because he wasn't even supposed to be seeing them at that time, is stronger now than it ever was because he got a second chance.
Yeah.
It was a wake-up call for him and he got a second chance. Now, when he tells this story, it's so impactful because he does it in a way that is charming. I mean, people laugh 1 minute, cry another minute. They're on board with him. Like he does such a phenomenal job of telling it. But when he tells it with purpose. And I know that we were at an event a few years ago called Life by Design, and we were both speaking. He was the keynote presenter, and he went last, and I went just before him. And I kind of did my talk about, dreams and goal setting. And then he came on to give this presentation. And in the audience, there was a woman who had been gifted a ticket to Life by Design and had every intention of going just to be polite and had already mapped out her final day, which was to be the day after the event. And when Jared came up to speak, it changed her because it suddenly opened her eyes.
Yeah.
And she went and she said, no, not. And she went and she reached out to him, and then she got some support and some help. And then a year later, she applied to be a speaker at Life by Design, went on, told her story. And in the audience, not one, not two, but 3 people were in various stages of contemplation of the end of their life. And at that point, they reached out to her. And now you have a ripple effect.
Yes.
And that's the power of story. So, and the thing is, everyone has a story. Everyone has a story of the struggle that you're either going through now or a struggle that you've gone through. Everyone has an event. I know people who are like, oh, my life is boring. I'm like, really, let's play an exercise. And we break it down and we look at the epochs of their life. Everyone has a story to tell. Some of them, they don't all have to be tragic either. There can be some really powerful, enlightening moments of things that went good for you. And why did they go good? And that's a story that you need to tell as well, because people can learn from that, from both from the good and the bad. And if you can tell that story, you can inspire other people. And that is when the positive change happens.
Wow. I am tingling with energy at the moment hearing you tell that story and sharing that, because there's so many things happening in what you've just told. And the story of your friend Jared, your own experience at the Life by Design event, the woman who had her plans mapped out for the next day, who heard Jared speak and had that one tiny spark of inspiration that changed the rest of it. And then when she had the chance to speak and did the same thing as Jared, she influenced in a positive way 3 more people, just like I. The reason I'm tingling now is because I'm, without going all woo-woo on you, Tyler, and the audience right now, but I'm right into the woo-woo, yet I've got my 2 feet very firmly planted on the ground, I can assure you. But I've got some woo-woo happening here right now, and I just know it, that there's somebody listening to you, watching you, Tyler, who's going to be inspired positively in the same way, and I'm so happy and grateful for that. All right, so let me play on the flip side, okay? Let's say we've got someone who's skeptical, someone who's right now plagued by more negativity than positivity. They hear you say what you say and they think to themselves, well, that's all right for you, Tyler. That's all right for your mate, Jared. You're trained performers. Getting up on stage in front of a sea of people that I don't know doesn't frighten you. It frightens the shit, out of me. I don't think I can do it. What do you say to that person?
Well, I say that you can. And if you look through that story, we inspired somebody who was not a speaker, who then knew innately that she needed to tell that story because it literally saved and changed her life. And Jared did all the work, right? He gave his presentation and it changed her, but then she went and spoke and changed and saved 3 lives. And I don't know how many countless others beyond that. That just happens to be the exact chain of events that I have seen.
Yeah.
And I've worked with countless charities and speakers and entrepreneurs and just general people who need to get over this fear, and sometimes crippling fear of public speaking. One of my clients early on, Amy, is a brilliant psychologist. And I mean brilliant psychologist. And she has interactions with people daily. That's her job. And her, when we were first working together, I'm like, well, you talk to these people. And she's like, yeah, but they talk to me. And then I just have to give advice. I just have to be a really good listener and give advice. So they're talking to me, so it takes the pressure off. When I have to go up and present and be somebody, I can't. I said, well, first of all, you don't need to be somebody. You need to be you. Yeah. And nobody does you better. And not only is my friend Amy a brilliant psychologist, she's also stunningly beautiful. It's not fair to be that smart and that good looking. And I said, you have, and she's nice. She's such a pleasure and a joy to hang out with. She's so instantly disarming that you of course she's an incredible psychologist because you just want to unburden yourself to her. You just open up. And I said to her, you have so many gifts going for you. Just tell your story. Just give your idea. So at the time she had this brilliant idea. And this is 8 to 10 years ago, where she wanted to do shock virtual therapy. And I don't mean shock therapy. I mean, surprise, virtual therapy. We talk about it in the context of 2021, and it doesn't seem that obscure an idea. But 8 years ago, they told you if you couldn't physically touch the session that you were in and be in that it didn't have the same effect, that you couldn't build a rapport, that you needed to be and maintain a physical space so that, for the safety and blah, blah. There was a whole bunch of rationale behind why you had to conduct these sessions face to face. And she said, well, we can do face to face. We have so many people who need help that can't, because of their physical distance, can't get to us. And she cited things like reservations or remote communities where your nearest professional may be a 5-hour flight away. And those are the people who need help the most. So why wouldn't we make this available, at least to trial it out? But she would freeze up whenever she was in front of a board or in front of investors, because she had built up this thing in her head where they were somehow better than her. And I'm like, no, you are the one with the genius idea. Go in and passionately talk about it. Tell a story. And that's where we got into this story. Like, tell about a time where it could work, or if you had it where it would have made a difference, or why you think this is important. Like, let's dig down into your why and really drive through that message. And we'll tell a powerful story around it. And so she did. She talked about how, she had tested these things and the feedback that she was getting, and she wanted to get it approved and licensed and show it. And she needed funding for it. And that's all she needed, was just the funding so that she could get the grants and the permits and the permission to go and do this as a real thing. And she was terrified. Like, she would shake, she would tremble. She didn't want to do it. And I finally made her go on and do Facebook Lives. I said, you're going to do one Facebook Live a day for a week, just to talk. And she's like, well, what if people are watching? I said, nobody ever watches Facebook Lives. Don't you worry about it. And so she got on and she did the lives. And sure enough, the first couple, nobody watched, and she just got used to talking to a camera. And then a few people popped on and said, hey, and they were really supportive of what she was saying. And suddenly it wasn't so terrifying because she just did it. She just exercised the muscle. Eventually, she was able to raise over $1 million for this project. And now she's at the forefront of it, right?
Wow.
When people are like right now in this 2020 and 2021, the need for remote virtual counseling is exponential. And she was ahead of the curve because she had the vision and because she was able to say it. If she'd have kept it back, I don't know where her counseling practice would be. She has over 40 counselors that work under her that she's trained to do the remote thing. They were on top of it. As soon as it came out, they were able to rapidly help people when they needed it most.
Oh, how satisfying that must be for you, that you played that part in helping Amy go from one side of the chasm to the other, build a bridge for her, and there she is now. She got $1 million in funding. She's got 40 people working with her, under her, or however that structure works. I'm wondering right now, because I think the person who's watching or listening to you right now might be thinking, gee, I really want to know a bit more about Tyler Foley and what he does. Where can I go online? And so is there a site that you'd like people to visit to see more about you?
Absolutely. If anybody needs to know more, if you want to overcome the fear of public speaking, all of my information is on SeanTylerFoley.com. And Sean is spelled the proper Irish way, SeanTylerFoley.com. For all of your listeners who, if they want, I have a link up in the upper right corner. So if they click on the upper right and click the button that says the method, it's a free download. It's 5 insider tips that I learned over the course of 35 years, and it will help them get over the stigma of public speaking and start to maybe unlock some of that inner storytelling so that they can really engage an audience and make a difference with their story.
Wonderful. I'll put the website, SeanTylerFoley.com, in the show notes. And then, as you've just described, they need to explain what they need to do. Well, it's a pleasure this has been speaking with you, Tyler. I was looking forward to this conversation because I was starstruck. I didn't even have to look at what movies or shows, where your name appears in credits, and I want a digital autograph, all right? I insist. I can't take no for an answer. Get it to me. However you get it to me, all right?
I'll do you one better, Mike.
Yeah.
When the show is over, you send me your address. I'll send you a signed copy of the book.
Oh, my goodness. Power to Speak Naked. There it is. Yes. Sean Thank you very much. And you'll autograph it for me?
I will.
Wonderful. There's the book. So that's the book, The Power to Speak Naked. And Tyler Foley, he's told his story. He's told his comeback story, more than one comeback, actually, going right back to childhood and coming back from that tragedy in the family. And what a blessing to have those people, your mum and the men folk, gather around you in that community you described, and to have people like Bob and his wife who took you under their wings, so to speak, and helped mould you to be the person you are today. Now, I'm insanely jealous, you bloody bugger. You're a good-looking dude, so God has put the molecules of your face together very well, and you were able to overcome the molecules and the atomic energy, whatever was going on in that palsy, in that paralysis, is gone. I don't know whether it's a medical miracle. I don't know enough of the story, but who cares right now? You're here to tell a story looking more handsome than it should be legal. And I think it's terrific, and it's been an absolute pleasure having this conversation with you, Tyler, and I really appreciate you making yourself available, and I'll thank you on behalf of the audience of the Comeback Coach podcast. And now, you, the listener, to the audience member, go to SeanTylerFoley.com. And Tyler, would you like to finish on a final word or a quote, if you have a final quote or something to leave off with?
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. I think I will reiterate what I already said. And that is, the thing you're afraid to say is what your audience needs to hear. Mm. And remember that the audience is on your side. Whenever you are presenting, the audience is on your side. So go out, tell your story, change the world.
There it is. Thank you. Thanks again, Tyler. And thank you to the audience member who is watching or listening to this. And I hope you'll join us again on the next episode of the Comeback Coach podcast. Tyler, have a wonderful evening in your part of the world.
And a wonderful morning to you.